Welcome to the Inspire Weight Loss Davy podcast. Drug-free, sustainable, life-changing weight loss. Here's your host, Martha Savloff.
Hello, and welcome everyone to episode number 3 of the Inspire Weight Loss Davy podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeremy Wolf, and I'm joined with none other than your host. We have Martha Savloff. Martha, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Happy to do number 3. It's going really well and our clients love it. So I'm loving this, Jeremy.
I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, this is a fun journey. It's going to be really, really interesting getting into all these topics. And I was now for me, what I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about portion control. Okay, because I like to eat a lot. And this is something that I typically have an issue with, as I'm sure most people do as well. Fortunately for me, I'm blessed with a pretty fast metabolism or high metabolism. And, I could not exercise at all and kind of eat whatever I want and not really balloon up to some degree. I mean, as I get older, it's more difficult. But now I'm starting to exercise. I'm starting to be a little bit more cognizant of this as I get a little older. And I was hoping you could share some insights, some tips, some tricks, things that, regular people can do to kind of mitigate their portions and control that for them. So please share with us.
I will. I can't wait to jump into this, but you're one of those, huh, Jeremy, that can eat whatever and you don't get weight, huh?
I mean, my wife hates me. My wife hates me for that because she eats like nothing and she has to watch very, very carefully. So I am blessed in that regard.
I have to give you a hard time for a second. Yeah, portion control. I have some interesting thoughts about portion control because it's not always what people think it is, especially here where we see clients on a daily basis and we hear so many different stories. And I have to tell you, Jeremy, that a lot of the stories that we hear is people not eating enough, believe it or not. So portion control can actually be or portion, I should say, can be the extreme, where somebody eats a ton of calories in one sitting and they're stuffing their face. And then the other side of the spectrum where they're not eating enough. And so because they're gaining weight, they're storing fat. So today's podcast, I wanted to touch on both sides of the spectrum because it does affect clients. It does affect our community. If we're not eating and feeding our body what it needs to have in order to live a healthy life. And you can be small and still be unhealthy. So just an FYI, Jeremy, I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying, even though there's people that don't gain weight and they eat a lot, that doesn't mean that they're healthy, So let's start with this side of the spectrum, which is people that just eat a ton in one sitting. And when I was dating my husband, he told me that I ate like a man. Because apparently I was one of those. So yes, we definitely in our society tend to overeat, and it's about quality too. So we tend to overeat foods that are not necessarily great for our bodies and contribute towards so many chronic diseases, right? So very high in sugar and carbs. And so that is a major problem. All that, people will go towards chronic diseases like diabetes and inflammation of their body and hypertension. So what happens is you can overeat vegetables, right? And your body...
What happens if you eat too many vegetables?
Well, it depends on the person. If I overeat vegetables, I gain weight. My body doesn't like the complex carbs. So I have to be very careful how much I eat. But there's people like my husband that he can eat vegetables all day long, and he does. And his body loves it, and he's super healthy and maintains in a great weight. So it's it's not a one size fits all. And then you can overeat carbs. And now your glucose levels are shooting up. You're storing fat. and you're contributing towards all this inflammation of our body, because that's a simple carb. You probably, white flour. There's so many different variables to the things that we eat, the quality of the foods that we eat, and then on top of that, we add the quantity on there.
Yeah.
So there's just not one. There's not one answer. It depends on the person.
So it's so important to have a plan in place for this type of stuff, because we do live in a society where everybody's on the move. We're instant gratification. I always say, you talk about portion control. When you go out to eat, right? You're paying money for food. You want to see a giant plate of food, right? And then you feel compelled to eat it all. It just, for me, I think structuring is so important, right? Like when I go to Publix and shop, if I just go there and buy a bunch of stuff, a lot of times I don't eat a lot of the stuff I get. But if you go before and you map out like an actual plan, right? Like Monday, I'm going to make this, Tuesday, I'm going to make that. And you kind of structure that out. It's a lot easier to, I guess, control the intake of what you're doing. And I think a lot of what you do with your plans at Inspire is centered around tailoring these plans to the individual so that they can create something custom that works for their body, right?
Right. That's exactly right. And as they're going through a program, we figure out how their bodies respond to certain foods. Like I just said, my body doesn't respond that well with complex carbs, but my husband's does. So we try to figure that out here. And look, we've been raised to like, don't leave food on the table. We've been raised that you have to eat a certain amount. I mean, my mother used to, when I was smaller, of course, give me the first plate. And before I can even answer her question, she's like, "Hey, do you want more?" And before I can even answer her question, she's already like piling up some more.
Food is love, right?
Food is
Especially
love.
The elder generations want to shower you with extra food and take care of you and nurture you. It's like, oh, keep eating, keep eating. It's like, I'm good, please.
It's love in relationship, but it's not love in our bodies.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you reap what you sow. So if you put all this stuff in your body, eventually, there's going to be an output, and it's going to come, something's going to surface. So I do have a couple of tips for our listeners and viewers today. So I can start sharing those right now, Jeremy.
Please.
So I have some portion control tips for you guys.
I got my pad and my pen here. I'm taking notes.
All right. Some of you guys have heard this before, but drink a glass of water. There's people that do not drink water while they're eating. And so it's all food, solid food, and you're just eating. Make sure you get that water in there so it can help you get fuller faster. Number 2, use smaller plates. That is a thing, actually. It does help.
Smaller plates.
Instead of like a big old plate and you
psychologically. Yeah. Just because you don't have to think you have too little food. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yes. It actually helps. I'm a bowl person. I like eating.
You're a what person?
A bowl.
Bowl. Okay.
Yeah. So I use a small bowl and I just pile it up in there and that's it. I'm done. So that's another tip. Number 3, we were talking about vegetables. Vegetables and fiber is king, especially fiber. So make sure that your meals consist of vegetables, and don't allow your main portion of your meal to be carbs.
Don't tell my kids that.
You tell your kids that?
I said, don't tell my kids that.
Oh, don't tell you. Oh my God. Yeah. It's like the carbs are this much, and then you have your little protein, and then if some vegetable, if that. No, just switch it up. Make sure that the veggies and the proteins are the main attraction to your meal and not carbs. Okay. Also eat slower. This is something that I think that in our society, it's kind of getting away from us, is, having that dinner time, eating and talking and communicating with friends or with your family.
100%. 100%. Now I speak from experience, having a 9-year-old and 11-year-old. It's like a tedious process to get everybody at the table to put their devices away and actually sit for 15, 20 minutes and have a discussion about the day, but it's so important.
Yeah, like now it's like, people get home late, they throw some food together, whatever they find, if they haven't cooked, and they sit on the couch and watch Netflix. That's what happens. So now it not only affects like the way that you're eating, but it also affects your relationship, because that's time. Dinner time was the time to communicate and connect with your family members, and that's kind of going away. So we have to be intentional to protect that. You know what I mean? Very, very, very important. This is another one that's pretty cool. And if you think about it, you're like, wow, yeah, that's true. Don't eat from a bag or a box. Like if you
That's like my favorite pastime. What are you talking about?
Jeremy, we're gonna need to talk.
I'm joking.
Think about it. You grab that bag of chips and you go over to the couch and you're watching your favorite show on Netflix. What do you think is gonna happen? You're just putting your hand in that bag.
I'm only gonna have like 2 chips. Yeah, I won't eat the whole bag. No.
Forget it. You're just lying to yourself. That's not happening.
No, I am very cognizant that like my son, he's a big eater. He loves to eat carbs. If he wants chips, I'm very diligent about taking a bowl and portioning out about it, because I know if I give him the bag, he'll just consume the whole thing. So I am very, I say this all jokingly, but I am like, I got it together like a little bit, right? I definitely need it. There's work to do here, but I'm okay.
I hear you. Okay. Ready for the next one?
Yes,
Stop going to buffets. You're just setting yourself up for failure. You're just setting yourself up for overeating. Like, let's just stop going to buffets. I'm sorry for any buffet owners out there.
No, I talk about getting smaller plate sizes, right? Just having a bigger plate wants to make you eat more. If you pay money for, like, psychologically, you go in, you're like, oh, it's $26.99 for this all-you-can-eat buffet. I have to eat everything because I need to get my money's worth. And then you end up eating 800 plates of food and you feel like you're going to die.
Right, exactly. And then guess what happens? You're gonna go home and sleep because you're like in carb overload, and now you feel fatigued and you're like, I'm done. You go home, lay down, and guess what's gonna happen? You're gonna store fat. Period.
Yeah, no, I know, because after I eat a whole bunch, I know when I lay down that compensates, right? My stomach gets smaller that way, right? The food goes away from my stomach, right? That's how it works. No?
No.
Oh, okay.
That'll be nice, but no. Okay.
Or I just pull my pants up higher over my gut to cover it up, and that works too.
No, none of that.
Okay.
So we've kind of talked about this one already. Limit mealtime distractions. So yeah, there's a lot of mealtime distractions. The TV is one of them. Like you mentioned, electronics at the table, that kind of deal. So also, what's a mealtime distraction? Allowing work or anything else to get in the way of your dinner time. So like, people are working till late hours. So now like that really important meal time with your family is no longer there. And we understand that life happens, right? Like I work here at the office. Sometimes I was here till 9:00 last night, right? But so I missed the meal time, but I'm going to be intentional about compensating for that, meaning maybe a breakfast, maybe a lunch. I'm going to create something that I have that time with my family at one point during the day. So just like being more intentional about your timing and those moments of connection, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Listen to this one. End your meal with a healthy, sweet treat. Now the key is healthy, right? Because you're savory, and then we've kind of like been taught that you kind of have to have some type of dessert, right? So then when you throw in the sweet, it's almost like psychologically, it's the end of your savory portion of the meal. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So I'm not talking about cookies or cake or any of this stuff, but grab some strawberries, a healthy fruit that's low glycemic, that's not high glycemic.
What about, sorry to cut in there. What about, one of the things I like to eat, and I don't know how productive it is, if I'm doing strawberries for like a sweet meal, I'll just mix that up with some whipped cream. I mean, not a crazy amount, but just mix it up for a little, or maybe a little sugar or something. I mean, is that okay to do?
It depends on the person.
Yeah. Okay.
So like if the person's trying to lose weight, or if the person's a diabetic, that is not a good thing to do, because sugar is sugar, right? So, but if you're not in that category, there's still better options for you, like natural sweeteners like stevia, monk fruit, or allulose, which is a natural sweetener but does not increase your insulin levels in your body. So, but here and there, like everything in moderation, right? So if you're healthy and you don't have a chronic disease, if you sprinkle a little bit of sugar on top of the strawberry, that's okay. But if you do it on a daily basis, it's gonna not be okay.
Okay.
Right?
Noted.
Eventually. So again, that's why it's important that people find help with their journey, because there's so many variables and everybody's different. All right. Last one, and this is probably the most important one. Listen to your body. Your body tells you. I promise you, if you get into the habit of having an awareness of your body and listening to your body tells you, it communicates to you. It really does. And your body will tell you, okay, I'm done. I'm done. I don't need any more food. And that doesn't mean when you're stuffed and you feel that last piece of bread in your throat. Because I've been there. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah. No, and I think a lot of that comes down to the pace at which you eat. Like for me, I'm one of those that just shovels the food in my face, and I don't feel like I'm full, so I keep eating. But if you eat over a longer period of time, you start to feel full. When you're full, your body starts to communicate to you properly. But when you're just kind of eating for the sake of eating, Yep.
So
yeah,
what's the perfect point? You're not hungry and you're not stuffed. You're satisfied. You're in the middle, right? That's the point that you're like, okay. And that you need willpower to do that. You have food in front of you. Maybe your family or friends are not done eating and they're still eating. And then you have to make that decision at that point. Am I going to stop eating or am I not going to stop eating? And so you have to be confident enough and have the willpower enough to say, okay, I'm done, even though everybody else is not, or even though there's still food left over. Do you know what I'm saying? So we hear this at Inspire all the time, like, oh, my husband makes me eat this, or my kid makes me do that. And nobody makes you do anything. Unless the person is opening your mouth and shoving that food down your throat. Nobody makes you do anything. It's okay for you to create those boundaries and those, rules and regulations for yourself. It's okay. It really is okay. So listen to your body.
All right. Perfect. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to end. You've gone over some really great tips, some really great suggestions. At least, if nothing else, just to kind of plant some seeds in listeners' minds, just to get them a little bit more aware of these types of things, so they can structure their daily habits in a way that's more effective for their long-term health and longevity. So, Martha, always a pleasure. Look forward to going deeper into these topics on a future episode. So have a wonderful day. And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
See you on the next episode of the Inspire Weight Loss Daily Podcast. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Inspire Weight Loss Daily Podcast. To get your journey started, visit inspireweightloss.com or contact 954-837-8811.